ultimately, what I realized through these years of work was that because of certain experiences I had had as a child, I did not believe that I was worthy of success or worthy or valuable financially. I believed I had no financial value. And so that showed up in me not taking care of my finances or my business because I didn't treat my business like a business. I was like, what's the point? I'm not going to actually end up being successful because that's not me. Like, I'm never going to be successful and I don't deserve money. So I don't need to even bother with this thing. And it also showed up in things like pricing. I undercharged for so long. I had the same starting rate for 6 years.
This is Rebel Therapist, a podcast for entrepreneurs who are trained as therapists and who want to level up their businesses, make a bigger impact, feel fulfilled, and be very well paid. I'm your host, Annie Schusler. How do you create healthy and effective financial practices for your small business? That's what we're tackling today. Exploring that question for myself has been complicated. I've been tracking every penny in my personal finances since 1997, and in my businesses, I've always tracked my income and expenses really carefully. But all that tracking didn't mean I was doing well with my money. My bookkeeping practices had a really stressful and tight energy to them. At one point, my wife found this red plastic button. It was attached to nothing, but it looked like it came from an old-fashioned computer. And it had the word panic on it. And she suggested that I glue that to my desk and press it whenever I was doing my bookkeeping. And although that was funny, it kind of freaked me out. And I hadn't realized how stressed out I seemed when I was dealing with money. I just kind of thought that was how that worked. Years later, I went through Barry Tesler's program, The Art of Money, and I also read her book. And her work started to help me slow down my nervous system whenever I was relating to my money. Then I started using the Profit First system created by Mike Michalowicz. 2 times a month, I go through that system to distribute my income into different bank accounts within my business. That gives me a clear look at what's happening in my finances and evens out the ups and downs. Then I hired a fee-only financial advisor to help me create a long-term plan. All of these things have helped me to really change the feeling I'm bringing into my money practices. So I still feel myself going into reactive mode sometimes, and I get that gripped, stressed feeling. It's just that now I have some better thoughts and better practices to lean into. And I know that these new practices are going to slow things down for me. I want to introduce you to someone who's helped a lot of my clients to find peace and empowerment with their money practices. Let me introduce Andi Smiles, a financial consultant and educator for small business owners. She was willing to share her own financial journey with us. Welcome, Andi. It's so good to talk to you again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So can you start out by telling us why is it that helping people with their money is so important to you?
Oh, it all comes back to my core belief that I think that when we have financial clarity in our business, we're able to show up and run our business from a more authentic, aligned place. Often when we are dealing with money, we're very reactive instead of proactive. And when you're reactive, you are often making decisions about your business out of scarcity or fear or maybe unrealistic expectations, that runs the gamut. But often those decisions that you make aren't really truly aligned with your core values and really your ultimate purpose in your business. So to me, the financial clarity piece is directly relates to the being an authentic business owner and really being here in your business from a place of being really grounded.
Oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One word that I use a lot about my own money journey is intimacy. Like that my goal is to have intimacy with my money. And it feels like there's a lot of overlap between that idea of intimacy and clarity. And what I mean when I say intimacy is like knowing what the numbers are and then also making decisions about it from a place of being present Yeah. And that sounds like really similar to your idea of clarity.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, we really have to think about our money as being in a relationship with us. You know, when I first started my business name was something different. It was BFF, which is Best Finances Forever. And it was a play on this idea of your money is your friend. And the same way that you would cultivate and nourish a relationship with your best friend is how you're going to cultivate and nourish a relationship with your money. And part of that is, you know your friends' likes and dislikes, but you're intimate with your friends. You know things about your friends that other people don't know. And you hopefully are there to support your friend. You're showing up for your friend, you're being engaged with your friends, all the same things that how we treat the people we love the most in our lives is how we should be treating our money in that relational sense.
Oh, I love it. And the idea of like, if I'm being a good friend to my money, I'm not going to ignore it when it's being stressful, right? Like I'm going to show up and be present. That's interesting. I'm going to have to think about that a lot. So, how do you tell us a little bit about your business, what it's like now? How are you working with folks?
So, I am a small business financial consultant and educator. So, I work with people kind of like in two ways. The first is one on one sessions with folks, and I do everything from helping people set up their bookkeeping systems and learn how to use their bookkeeping systems, troubleshooting their bookkeeping systems, to profit planning with people, doing income forecasting from a really holistic method that I developed that that is not just about revenue. It's about all the things we need our business to do for us, including, our owner pay and aligning with our values. So it's a holistic approach to income forecasting and profit planning. And then honestly, people who I've worked with, I do a lot of just consultations on any sort of financial issues that they're facing in their business that they need somebody to talk through with them. Because I do think that money can feel very mysterious, and that doesn't mean that you cannot learn about money and become empowered to like manage your own money. But sometimes you do want somebody there as like a sounding board, and that person might not be like your partner or your best friend, right? It needs to be somebody that is a little bit removed from your business or your life, just to make it a little bit more comfortable to have those conversations. So that's my one-on-one work.
And do you ever think of yourself in that one-on-one work? Do you ever think of yourself as kind of a chief financial officer for people's businesses?
I do and I don't. I don't love hierarchical terms like that. So I tend to stay away from using those types of language. And I feel like that language is very based in like corporations and models that I personally are not aligned with. So I'm not really interested in being someone's CFO. I'm more interested in teaching somebody how to make empowered and aligned decisions about their money and how to know the processes. Like they need to know the processes that they go through. Like I have a lot of repeat clients, but I also love it when I have a first year with a client, I'm working with them a lot, and then I see them once the next year. Right. I like that they peter out because that means that they have learned the skills and I've done my job. Right. That is success to me.
I
So
get it. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, great. All right. And you were going to tell us the other way you work with people.
So I teach both some live workshops, virtually or otherwise. I work with, if you're in the Bay Area, Renaissance Entrepreneurship Center, which provides really, really affordable workshops to the public around various things, including finances, which I teach. But I also have a suite of digital products. So those are obviously accessible to anybody in the world. And I have, they range the gamut from a 60-minute mini training on preparing for your taxes to a full-blown 8-module course on sort of everything you need to know about business finances, and managing that in your business. So the teaching is another big part of my business. And honestly, one of the things that I'm most passionate about, because I love being able, again, just to teach people these skills and not gate this knowledge that has been so historically kept by certain industries and almost like protected in a way to create dependency on people in the accounting profession.
Yeah. Do you find that a lot of folks from marginalized groups are drawn to your work?
I do. Yeah, and I've taught in some like private programs that were geared towards folks from marginalized groups as well.
So can you tell us what one thing I want to dig into today that I'm so grateful that you're willing to talk about is your own journey in finding your financial practices in your business. Can you give us kind of a snapshot of what your financial practices look like now? And then we'll go back a little bit and look at how you got there.
Yeah, it's fun to talk about the now because how I got, when I think back about how I was, I'm like, wow, I can't believe I'm here. um, yeah. So in terms of what I do for my business finances, my background is in bookkeeping. I started bookkeeping 10 years ago. So I have a very high tolerance to bookkeeping. So I actually do my bookkeeping daily. That's one of the first things I do in the morning. I have an hour block of time in the morning where I have a set number of tasks that I do that are sort of like the daily maintenance that I have to do in my business. And one of those for me is bookkeeping. So sometimes that takes 5 minutes if there's not a lot going on in the books. And sometimes it takes longer. If I have to, remind people of invoices or invoice people or, various things that might be coming up. But I do my bookkeeping daily, and that's a huge part of my financial process because I am so engaged and aware of everything that's happening in my money. I never miss a bill. I never miss an owner payment. I never miss anything because I am doing this every single day. There's no really space to miss anything. So on that same token, I would say that I run a report and look at my profit and loss report at least once a week. Sometimes I'm looking for different things. So it may be more depending on what I'm looking at. But one of the things that I do at a minimum once a week is I run my report and I do a previous month comparison report.
Okay. So the one you're running is for the current month when you're
Yes.
running that. Okay, cool.
Yes. I don't really need to go back and do past months because I do this every week. I'm pretty clear. But one of the things that I do is I run a profit and loss report and then I compare it to the previous period. So sometimes it'll be the whole previous month because I like to see if I'm on track. And sometimes it'll just be month to date. But basically what I'm doing is I'm looking to see where has my revenue gone up? Where has my revenue gone down? What's going on with my spending? If something looks odd, like I have more spending than I did last month in a certain category, and I don't immediately know why that is, I'm going to look at it and check it out. So again, it's just building, as you put it, that financial intimacy, like really knowing everything that's going on in my business and understanding, where my money's coming from, and also trying to identify the trends of where my money's coming from. So if I look at my profit and loss report and I see that my digital product sales are really high for a month, I'm going to think back to what happened. Oh, a big part of my list went through my funnel, right? I can kind of understand why certain things are happening. Or if I have a specific digital product like mini training that's selling really well, oh, it's tax season, that's why. So I really understand the ebbs and flows of my business.
So are you looking for, because those are just two positive examples you gave, are you sometimes looking for what's working and how can I do more of that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So I definitely do that. It's funny because you can look at all sorts of things. So what's working and how can I do more of that? Like, what is it do I want? Like, what revenue streams do I want to increase? And are the things that I'm doing to try to increase those revenue streams working? That's one strategy. But the other thing is that sometimes we want to move out of certain revenue streams, right? We want to move out of certain work that we're doing and transition into something that we enjoy more. So also looking at, am I making those moves? Like, am I seeing a shift in income? So that would be an example where if I'm looking at my report and one income category has gone down, but another one has gone up, that's exciting. But if the opposite's true, like the one that I don't want to do is going up and the other one is stagnant or has gone down, then wow, whatever I'm doing isn't working.
That makes total sense. And I think a lot of people who are listening are in a position where they are therapists or healers with a private practice who are also creating another revenue stream, another business, using their skills in a different way. And so for a lot of folks, they're wanting to increase that second business and either keep their healing practice or their therapy practice the same or let it start to decrease over time. And that sometimes takes a lot of patience and a lot of time and work. And I can see how having a lot of clarity could be so helpful in being able to see month after month, even if the growth is not huge, being able to see month over month, okay, I am making progress. This is shifting.
Yeah, I think the small shifts are really exciting. And it may be that you have a small shift one month and no shift the next month, but at least you know that the shift is possible because it's happened before, right? And it's about identifying how to replicate it. And where the difference in this of having this like really weekly clarity about money versus doing this every quarter or every 6 months is you're not going to notice those small shifts as much. So you may just throw your hands up in the air and be like, oh, what I'm doing isn't working at all, or this isn't worth it. Where really there probably have been moments where it's worked, whatever your strategy is that you're trying to implement, it's worked, but you've sort of missed them because now you're just looking at like huge swatches of time.
Yeah. Yeah. So can you tell us about what things were like when they weren't at this place with your money practices, and kind of where you struggled and where you kind of had to build your practices and build your own clarity with your money?
Yeah. So I proudly identify myself as a recovering financial hot mess because for the first many years, I would say 5 years in my business, I've had my business for about, I think it's going on 11 this year. So I've had my business for a while. And I would say the first half of it, I was so bad with money. And the thing is, my business has always been in the financial industry. So my business started as like a side hustle, but I was a bookkeeper and I had clients. And I was really messy with my money. So all the things that I'm on my soapbox about preaching in my own content about like having a separate bank account for your business and doing your bookkeeping on a regular basis and looking at your numbers. And I didn't do any of that. So when I preach to you, I'm coming from a place of love because I've been there too, but I also have been on the other side of being there, so I know the differences. But I just did not take care of my finances. And the thing for me is it wasn't skills based or knowledge based, because I think that happens a lot with people. They feel like, well, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do in my bookkeeping. I don't know how to do my bookkeeping. I don't know my tax deductions. What am I even supposed to track? There's a lot of like knowledge gaps. And for me, I didn't really like have that to lean onto, right? This was my job. Like I knew all of those skills. But for me, it really came down to my belief about how I was deserving or undeserving of money and success. And I took years to unpack this. So I'm giving a simplified example, but this was like years and years of work around my own money beliefs and wounding. But ultimately, what I realized through these years of work was that because of certain experiences I had had as a child, I did not believe that I was worthy of success or worthy or valuable financially. I believed I had no financial value. And so that showed up in me not taking care of my finances or my business, because I didn't treat my business like a business, because I didn't think, what's the point? I was like, what's the point? I'm not going to actually end up being successful because that's not me. Like, I'm never going to be successful and I don't deserve money. So I don't need to even like bother with this thing. And it also showed up in things like pricing. Like, I undercharged for so long. I had the same starting rate for like 6 years.
Okay. So yeah, that's interesting. With setting your prices, do you feel like there was something like you were kind of sabotaging yourself because of those beliefs that you were, okay, let me ask this a different way. Like, because I think this is so key. It's like when we're looking at pricing, I know for me, I I'm without even realizing it, I'm deciding what's possible. I'm deciding kind of what the reality is. And it's not reality that I'm looking at. It's actually like what's going on in my own mind. And so if I'm self sabotaging, if I'm, setting myself up to not be making a good living, I'm doing it without realizing I'm doing it. Like I'm saying, oh, this is the reality. This is like, we'll use different words for it. Like this is what the market will bear or whatever, where really it's my own mindset traps that are setting myself up for something unsustainable. Is that kind of how you found it happening for you with pricing, or what would happen for you?
I just quite frankly didn't believe I was worthy of earning more money. Like I didn't think that I was worthy of money. I had a really deep rooted limiting belief that I was somebody who wasn't meant to have money, that it wasn't even like based on my beliefs, it was like based on like a universal mandate. Like I was like, I am universally, I have been showed all this proof that I am not somebody that is worthy of money. So I wouldn't even try.
Okay. And so then you were kind of creating that more of that proof as you went.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I didn't raise my rates because again, I was like, well, why would I raise my rates? I'm not worthy of more money. Or if I need, you kind of know what you need to make. And then you kind of know what you would like to make. And even if I was making what I needed to make, I was like, this is all I deserve.
Mm-hmm. Hey, this is future Annie jumping in just for a minute. We're going to get right back to that conversation. Are you ready to build a new version of your business? And do you want to launch an online program that uses your gifts in a new way? I would love to help. And I created something for you. Create Your Program is a small group coaching experience to help you harness your gifts and create a pilot program that you can deliver online to the people who need it. Maybe your thing is going to be a course or a retreat or a coaching program, or maybe it'll be something else. You'll work with a small group of entrepreneurs like you to get clear on what your pilot program will be and then to get it out to the world. I don't want you to get stuck waiting for the right time to create your program or to convince yourself that you're not ready or that you need one more training before you can create your own thing. A recent participant said, "In Create Your Program, I learned the recipe for taking an idea to fruition that I can use forever." Learn much more about Create Your Program at rebeltherapist.me/create. Okay, let's get back to Andi. I think sometimes we set ourselves up to, and I know this is really true of therapists and healers, and I think of you as a healer in terms of just a different field. It's like we'll sometimes set ourselves up, well, I can make the amount of money I need to make if I work this many hours, and we'll kind of set ourselves up with a non-sustainable number of hours and then set our rates there. So did you do that to yourself? Like, did you set your rates at a place where like I can get by on this amount of money as long as I keep suffering?
Yeah. So the way that my business evolved, which kind of speaks to this, is that my business evolved completely word of mouth. And I booked out my practice just through a referral network. Like people just kept getting referred to me and working with me and referring me to more people. So I had like a really steady stream of like ongoing clients. And I did not. So you would think that you're like, wow, a lot of people want to work with me. My demand is high. And obviously, I'm doing something well. I should raise my rates. But I didn't think of it like that. I just thought of like, oh, I'll just work more and more and more and more, instead of understanding that like these were signals that I should be taking about raising my rates so I don't have to work as much. But instead, I just kept piling on the work. And how my business ended up going online was that I just actually physically couldn't take on any more clients. Like I had to say no to people because I just didn't have the time, even working all the time. I mean, at that point in my life, I just felt like all I was a workhorse. And I wasn't even making any money. Like I was like paying my rent and, barely getting by. I had credit card debt. Like I still wasn't making enough money, but I was working all the time.
So probably if you had looked at someone else's business who was in the same boat as you would have said, it's time to raise your rates, clearly. But because you had that block yourself, it maybe didn't look that way. Like sometimes I think we'll think, oh, my business is full because I have these rates. And so if I were to raise these rates, I wouldn't have a business anymore. And that's not true. That's not how it works.
Yeah. I mean, they say, right, with like rates, it's like if you're only getting yeses, your rates are too low.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But yeah, I definitely, and again, it's because I had this very specific belief about myself. I'm like, everyone else is worthy of making money. It's just not me. So I can tell you all the things you need to do to raise your rates. But when it comes down to me, like I know that this is true about myself.
How'd you work through that?
I think the first crack in the armor was I read a book called Emotional Currency, which I highly, highly recommend. It's actually still, I listen to a lot of audiobooks on personal finance and money and emotions and stuff like that. And I still think Emotional Currency for me is one of the best books out there. So I read Emotional Currency in a little book group, and we really started to talk about things. And I began to dissect what it was that were the experiences that shaped my money beliefs about myself. And I had a lot of like big aha moments. But then, there's understanding where something comes from, and that there's healing from it. And those two processes, I feel like it isn't like you just understand and then you're like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Right. You understand. And then you have to kind of figure out like, what do I need to heal? Because I now call these money wounds, because I do think that they're wounds. I don't really like calling it mindset, because I don't believe that you can just be like, no, now I believe this. It's like, it's an actual healing process. Right. It's a process that you have to go through to like heal, and they're real wounds, and they deserve the same care that you would give to like a gash on your arm. So I went through the process of, really healing from these wounds, and, and they're money wounds, but they stemmed from deeper wounds. And so I had to heal from those. So it was like a lot of working through that stuff on my own, also in therapy. And then I think ultimately the last piece of that healing happened when I went to coaching school. I was in coaching school for 9 months, and one, I was getting a lot of coaching, which helped me a lot. But two, I began to understand the tools that I could use on myself to even further along the healing, because I was learning, how to become a coach. And that, then I developed these tools that I would use on myself and then use with other people. But those tools were what helped me kind of that last piece of it. And with all wounds, there's scars. So they still appear sometimes. It's just now I have more resources to work with them than instead of reacting, instead of just being like, oh yeah, money. Someone said no to my rate. That means I'm not worthy. I don't go into that space anymore, but maybe a little ping will come up and I can notice it and understand it.
How do the people who are either working with you one-on-one or who are buying your digital product finding you?
It's a mix. I still have a really strong and healthy referral network. I really am just so grateful for all of the people who refer me. That's how my business started. And I think that there's something really amazing about community, community really being what spreads your business and tells people about you. So I have a strong referral network, but I also have like a pretty decent online presence, especially on Pinterest. Which I know people are always like, Pinterest, isn't that for recipes and cookies and all that stuff, like crafts? But Like I'd say 75% of my website traffic comes from Pinterest.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
yeah.
Okay.
And it's through, I have a blog on my website. And so I have those articles up and people are looking for that content on Pinterest and they come to my site. They get on my email list. They find out about my products. And a lot of people who buy my products actually come off of Pinterest. It's pretty amazing what Pinterest has done for my business.
That is amazing. And if people are wanting to find your Pinterest, where would they find it?
Um, well, if you type in tax deductions, I will come up in Pinterest. But you can just go. It's Andi Smiles. So that's my profile. If you type that in, I will come up, and there's a board with all of my blog posts on it, and then I have tons of other resources that I've linked out to on my other board. So if you are looking for an article about something in the finance realm, I probably have something about it.
Cool. And that's ANDI.
ANDI.
So you also create a podcast. And does that come out weekly?
Yes. So it's a weekly podcast. And the premise of the podcast is that I answer questions that people have asked me or send me about their business finances. So my blog is super robust. I have so much like how-to content and videos and stuff on there. And I just didn't really want to replicate that in a podcast form. And my favorite podcasts are Q&A ones. I love hearing other people's questions and hearing the answers because they're either things that I didn't know that I should be asking, or they're just really interesting. It's like, wow, like I never would have researched this. Like, who knew? So that's for my podcast. That's what I wanted to do. And I really wanted it to feel like it was me and you talking, like how I would answer my best friend, who luckily is a small business owner. So anytime I'm recording, I'm just like imagining her. And I'm like, okay, what would I say to her? And so it's not super structured. It's really should feel like we're friends and I'm answering your questions in a real way. So that's what the premise is. And I usually answer 2 questions per episode.
And okay, how long are the episodes and how long have you been making the podcast?
So the episodes, they are usually between 20 and 30 minutes. None of them are ever over 30 minutes. I just feel like people don't want to listen to money for more than 30 minutes. Maybe some of you do, but most people...
Yeah, because we're probably past 30 minutes and they're listening.
But most people, they don't want to know about like profit margins for 30 minutes. So they're supposed to be short. They're meant to be short and sweet, and you get what you need and you can move on with your life. And I think I launched it this year. I launched it in January.
Oh, cool. Okay. Great.
So it's pretty new. I think at least at the time of this recording, there's like 15 episodes, 14 episodes, something like that. So they do come out weekly, and they really like the topics range, like questions like, what should I track? How do I make my business more profitable? What should I say for self-employment taxes? These really sort of like fundamental questions that people are asking about their finances.
And so it's new enough that I'm imagining you haven't seen a lot of new people coming into your business from the podcast, but I'm imagining that that's part of the plan, and that's likely as well.
Yeah. I mean, I actually have had somebody who I worked with kind of come in from like a combo of YouTube and my podcast that was like, I watched one of your videos and then I saw that you had a podcast and started listening to the podcast because I like podcasts better. And then became like a client. So I have seen some people coming in, but to me, the podcast, yes, it's to bring new people in, but it's also to continue serving my current audience, because I don't want to just, be like, great, you're on my email list, buy my stuff, bye. Like I want to keep providing content for them and resources and value and making sure that they're still getting their questions answered. And, we all like our different formats. So some people like to read. The blog's great for that. Some people like to watch videos. I have some videos. Some people like to listen to podcasts that, it's about meeting people where they're at, especially with money, which is so difficult for people to dive into. I think it's even more important that we find the right channel or medium for people that they can tolerate and enjoy.
Is there anything else you want to leave small business owners with before we say goodbye?
Yeah, I think like this has kind of been my, I don't know if mantra is the right word, but something that I feel really hits the point of how we feel about money, which is that money isn't hard, but it's hard to deal with. So I really do believe that we can all learn how to manage money. And we have knowledge gaps and those are real things. And it's not to dismiss that. But I do feel like everybody has a part of themselves that's good with money. And money at its core, at its real core, when you're teaching people about money, the concepts are actually pretty simple. It's just about teaching it properly and giving people the space to learn it. But at the same time, money is hard to deal with. So it isn't hard at its core, but it is hard to deal with. And that's the emotional side of money. And that is something that I think we all need to spend a little bit more time working on, because often people come and they want to learn like a lot of technical skills, but not address some of the more like emotional stuff that's coming up about the money. And that's part of what's going to hold you back, as we've seen with my story. It was really emotional. So it's just about addressing that there are these two components of money, and knowledge is one piece of it, the technical side, but there's also the emotional side, and learning how to manage both is equally as important.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Andi. This has been really valuable.
Thank you.
You can find out more about Andi at andismiles.com. That's Andi. I want to thank Cosmo Palms for editing this podcast and Brianne Rising for taking great care of our guest. Thank you so much for listening. If you found this episode supportive, please just take 1 minute and give Rebel Therapist a rating or review. Even better, share this episode with a friend. All right, I'll see you next time.